Hey everyone, good morning. Well, it's morning for me. Good afternoon for some of you. Good evening, wherever you're joining from. Thank you for being here. One of the questions I get asked frequently here on YouTube is, how did I get my first clients? How do I get repeat clients? And that is like the $1 million or six-figure dollar question is, how do you get clients when you're doing videography and photography or both of those? How do you get those clients and how do you get them to pay you to where it can be sustainable for you? And it's a great question. It's one that I really enjoy exploring, and it will kind of look a little bit different for everybody, but I think across the board, there are things that you can do to get clients. And so I had a conversation with a buddy of mine, Mark Pasternack, who is very good at this. Somebody who's been getting clients for video production for the last 10 years and in different contexts. He did this for his own agency that he actually owned with employees. And then whenever he stepped away from doing that and just kind of being on his own as a producer, now he does this like really, really, really well and has the process dialed in. So I wanted to take a moment to just sit down with him and talk about those very beginning stages where you're trying to get clients, and just kind of pick his brain on what his process looks like. So here is a conversation with me and Mark, just discussing that whole thing about getting your first clients and how should you go about doing that. So yeah, I hope you enjoy this conversation, especially for my audience, for folks who are paying attention. They're wondering, like, as a filmmaker, as an aspiring videographer, how do I get clients? And I feel like that's one of the questions that I get asked the most is, where do I find clients? How do I get clients? Especially if I don't have any kind of referral system set up. Maybe I have the very minimum in my portfolio, but how do I even approach getting my first clients?
Yeah, so I like to relate this to what I now call the Red Bull effect, right? Because like when Red Bull first came on the scene, they weren't dominating the energy drink world or the sport drink world, just like, I don't know who else was at that time because I wasn't born. But like one thing I just always remember in college was, whether it was the college I went to or I was go visiting friends, right? Like on the Oval or wherever, the big green lawn space, there's always just like two young people with Red Bull backpacks, always passing out Red Bull, right?
Yeah.
And everyone's
Oh
drinking
yeah.
it and they're like, oh, this is cool, and then they got free Red Bull. And then they're trying to party and they're trying to stay up late. They're going to the gas station. They're probably going to buy a Red Bull, right? And so I say all that because, like, first I like to think about, like, do you have a portfolio, right? Do you have an example of what you're going to provide to your client, right? Like, just like going to a restaurant, right? They have a menu. You go to their website. You see like, oh, okay, wow, these dishes look really high end. Like, oh, this is an award-winning chef, right? It's the same for us as filmmakers, is what are we showing our clients that we can do for them? So before we can even reach out or, do the classic sales outreach, is really making sure that we have everything as a filmmaker set up kind of behind the scenes and like we have our house in order. And so
Yeah.
for me, that starts with a portfolio. And if you don't have a portfolio or you don't have the portfolio that you really want, then I always start with a free sample, right? Like at a restaurant or the Red Bull effect. What did they do when they had no market share? They walked around college campuses, which were their biggest ideal clients or customers, handing out free Red Bull. And so the same principle applies if you're a filmmaker, is find your ideal client and just go do some free work for them. It doesn't have to mean like it's a huge marketing campaign.
Right.
It's a 5-minute documentary, but like go film for 2 hours and give them a 30-second, really compelling story that they can post on social, right? Because
Or just to meet their immediate need. I tell people that all the time is like, you may have this grand idea of doing this awesome video for them, but that may not be their immediate need. Like their immediate need may be they just need to create a simple sales video to go to somebody else, or they need to create a video about a presentation. It could be a boring video to you as the creator, but that
yes.
is their immediate need. And like I feel like that sometimes is the difficulty. Sometimes is like in the beginning, we want to create something cool, something awesome for them. but they can't get on board with that because that's not what they need right now.
No, that's a really good point. And I think one thing that you could do as a filmmaker is just go on their website and see, like, do they even have a welcome video or a sales video? And
Yeah.
if the answer is no, then you can bring them not just like your own idea for what's going to benefit you, but now all of a sudden you can bring them a strategy for using video and then make that immediate need video and blow them away. And they're going to be like, oh, what else can you do?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like, I don't know.
Mhm.
I just want to share a story. Like when COVID hit, probably at least half, if not like 3/4 of my clients all went away. And it was like, shoot, what am I going to do? Right. And there's like a 3-month period of just trying everything and anything. And the thing that grew my business that year was like the quarter of the clients that stayed, yeah, they like double, tripled, or quadrupled their spend. But I just started doing free work for things and companies that I was really passionate about. And one of them was the Columbus Airport. It was supposed to be a $20,000 project. COVID hit. They're like, we don't have a budget for it. And I was like, well, I'm kind of
Interesting.
just sitting in my office. Let's make this thing happen. And so we did it. And then they got a new marketing director. Nothing came of it. I think they
Yeah.
used it, right? But like, no, it was like one of those, well, at least I did something.
But
But then
and to reiterate, you were already in the business at that point. It's not like you were starting from scratch. Like this was just a
right.
moment where you wanted to drum up something new.
Oh yeah, like I mean, I'm already, I think at that point doing like $300,000 or $400,000 in revenue a year. So it's not like I was starting out, but at the same time, I'm always conscious of, okay, great. Like I'm very particular with the clients that I take on, but if half of them are leaving, there's half my revenue or more.
Right.
So how can I refill that the quickest? And for me, it always comes back to doing portfolio work because you are just completely giving. With no strings attached, right? And so, like, what a great way to build a relationship, build a new piece of portfolio that then you can go pitch somebody on
Mhm.
LinkedIn, on social, on cold email, etc. But like 5 months later, I got a call, random call, and I picked it up, and they're like, "Hey, is this Mark?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Oh, you worked with my husband like 5 or 6 months ago at the airport." And I was like, "Oh yeah." And I was like, "Where's this going?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm the marketing director of this humongous B2B company."
Mm.
And she's like, we need some product videos. Is that something you can do?" And now they've been a client for over 2 years and spending like close to $200,000 with us this year.
Right. Wow. Jeez.
And
All from that moment where you just decided to give, lean into it and give.
yeah, and it's like I don't share that to brag. It's not like every client's paying
Right.
$200,000 off a free video, but it's like I have 4, 5, 6 stories like that over the last 10 years, and I know there's a lot of pushback. Well, don't do free work. Like that, I got into this business like not to do free work. I started my own business so I can get paid. Yeah, absolutely. But again, like it goes back to portfolio, right? You need the work. It's kind of like that catch-22. Like you need the
Mhm.
portfolio, you need the experience
Yep.
to get the
To get the
type of
work.
work that you actually want to get. And so you don't do it forever, but like if you're starting out, go do 3 free projects for different types of companies. Or like if you're looking to grow and expand and maybe you're like, "Man, I want higher end clients."
Yeah, I
Like
want to pivot a little bit.
go pivot and go reach
Yeah.
out to some of these like bigger marketing directors and just feel like, "Hey, in 2 weeks, I've got this week free and would love to create X, Y, and Z video that I think could help you here. Do you guys have any time?" And I'll come film and create, whatever video it is.
Yeah,
Um,
and sometimes I like that strategy, and like I like what you said in terms of like I've got like this week available, and even pitching it to them of like, let's dream about this together. Let's, because I think using that kind of
mm,
terminology really sparks something in folks. Like, let's dream a little bit about what could be possible. Because I feel like when people are strapped to their marketing budget and they're strapped to specific analytics, they can't always dream themselves, And so it's like you're taking an opportunity for yourself to be able to hopefully do a project that would really elevate yourself and your brand. And then at the same time, you're opening them up to an opportunity to really kind of dream forward with their marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. Because if you just go in, you're like, hey, can I just do a free video? And they're like,
Yeah.
well, why would I give you my time or my team's time? So I think that's a really good added point to when you're reaching out to try to do portfolio work or free video or, you know, the Red Bull principle, whatever you want to call it. Like at the end of the day, you're just building your portfolio, but be able to give them strategy to be like, hey, here's where I see creating video in this part of your business could be really beneficial. So I'm like, oh, wow, I never thought about that before. Yeah, let's give that a shot. Oh, and there's no risk? Cool.
And when you traditionally reached out to some of these folks, like what means have you reached out? Has that been via like LinkedIn? Has that been just finding their email? What's your strategy there for finding these folks?
For me, it's mainly LinkedIn because I'm not a big social user right now. Now this year it'll change. We've got some bigger plans to put out content and to grow. But I think like Instagram DMs or LinkedIn DMs has definitely been the biggest success on my end. If I can find an email, that's great. Or often like I'll try to think of companies that I already shop at, right? Or already buy from, or I use, whether it's software, whether it's a coffee shop, whether, you know, whatever your niche is. Like now my niche is way more into B2B sector.
Yeah.
But if you're like pitching small businesses and you go to a coffee shop to work all the time, you probably already have a relationship there and you might just haven't thought about, hey man, like ask Joe the barista who owns the place if you
Right.
could create like a brand video for him, you know? So I think just like looking at your network and seeing what are the places that I frequent the most, or what are companies or small businesses that I'm most passionate about. Like one I
Yeah.
did just before COVID was like the nutrition company I use when I run, right? And they're a small business. And I just wanted to do it. I don't
Yeah.
think anything's really come from it yet, but it's like I didn't have any work kind of in that adventure space, supplement product space. And so it was a good portfolio piece to have at least.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I feel like that is just the hardest part. And even for folks who have an established, like some decent portfolio pieces where they're still struggling of like nobody's noticing, nobody's because that's the flip side is like if you do get a couple portfolio pieces and you have those to show, but then it's like you feel like you could just come upon a season where it's just like silent, you know? Um, and that's where I think some people are at that point, you know, they're kind of in that desert land where it's like they feel like they've done some of the work behind them that's really good, but at the same time, it's just freaking dry, you know, as all get out.
So I think like I don't know, it just reminds me, it takes me back to like your network is your net worth.
Mm,
And especially COVID, post COVID, social media age, um, it's totally different than it was pre-COVID. Like I'm such a grandpa when it comes to technology, even though I'm a millennial. But like we just got off like a 2-hour marketing call with our team to like talk through what's our social marketing strategy. And it was just funny because I was the butt of every single joke of like, that's not my world, right? But for most people listening, I bet you know social media so well, and I love it. And that's where I've gotten a lot of free work just on like I know LinkedIn. That's my
yeah.
jam. But what I did previous to all that was go to so many networking events in person, shaking hands, making relationships and building my network that way. Whereas I think it's just really important to find the way you connect with people most.
Yeah.
And for me, like it might not be the most efficient way. That's for sure. Like I definitely got burnt out on it, but I love to be around people in person.
Mhm.
And now meetings are you're like group meetups are starting to come back and things like that. But I think it's just being really intentional. And if you're more of an introvert, that's where I think social media is amazing for you because you can
For
just
sure.
sit in your pajamas and be messaging and just networking with people, not even trying to pitch them, right? But just like building up your brand awareness personally, professionally, just like making connections with other people inside the industry, with other clients, other small business owners, I think is a really powerful piece of the puzzle that is often missed.
Yeah. And I want to reiterate for some folks, like you're going to have to do a combination of both in the very beginning.
Yes.
Like it's, you can't avoid either or, I don't think that you can truly just do all social media and attract all of the clients, especially depending on the clientele. Like for you, Mark, and we do a lot of B2B. Like that's the majority of what we do. I cannot be active on social media, or I can't be active on Instagram and think that all of my business is going to come from that, because I can't think of, outside of very few clients that saw any of my content on Instagram that have hired me and paid me the most. Most of those folks are people that I've built a good relationship from just being in person with them, or it's come from LinkedIn. So it's like it's like knowing which platform is going to get you the clients that you want to work with. And that might be Instagram. Like you said, it might be small businesses, it might be specific kinds of content. That might be Instagram. But if like you want to do B2B stuff, you're going to have to get out there and get to know people and talk to them and network, but you're also going to need to be active on LinkedIn and posting there. So you got to pay attention to that and not think that like sitting in your own silo, creating your own content, hoping that people are going to find it might be the wrong silo.
And I think like it kind of goes back, like I just pulled up my website because this is just the older I get and I have 4 kids, it's so hard to remember things. But I'm just like looking through like some of my proudest clients that I've done work with or I still do work with. And I'm like, man, like most of those have come from a referral and the power of referrals, right? And that's where if you just build up your network, your community, whether that's online or whether that's like in person, the more that people know about what you do and the easier you can tell them about what you do, the easier it's going to be for them to refer you when they're out networking. And they're like, hey, do you know any like video people who could do this type of thing? And they're like, oh yeah, like I met Mark the other day, or I met Trent.
Right.
Like you should reach out to him.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with my buddy, Mark Pasternack. If you're interested in more content, we actually continue the conversation on how to pitch clients. So when you get to the stage of actually pitching a project or pitching a certain budget, we go into details about how you need to approach those scenarios. And that's in this video. So please check out that video next, and I'll see you all on another video.